Commander Zixta had seen many species surrender in his 50 cycles of military service, but never like this. The human delegation stood in the center of the crystalline chamber aboard his flagship, their pale faces showing no fear, no desperation, no anger. Just a strange, quiet determination that made his secondary heart skip a beat. "You wish to negotiate terms?" Zixta clicked his mandibles together, the sound echoing through the vast space. His voice carried the authority of someone who had conquered 12 systems for the hegemony. The lead human, a female with graying hair and lines around her eyes, stepped forward. "We do, Commander. But first we need to discuss something that your intelligence reports might have missed." Admiral Krextall, Zixta's second-in-command, let out a chittering laugh from his position near the tactical displays. "Missed? Our scouts have been observing your pathetic little world for 3 rotations. We know everything about your primitive weapons, your fractured governments, your polluted atmosphere." The human female's expression didn't change. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen, Director of Earth's Unified Defense Council. What you may not know, Commander, is that Earth isn't just home to adult humans." Zixta felt a ripple of confusion pass through his consciousness. Of course there would be juveniles. Every species had offspring. "Your point, Dr. Chen? Human children aren't like other species young. They're not helpless. They're not innocent in the way you might expect." She paused, glancing at her companions. "Before we discuss surrender terms, you need to understand what you're really dealing with if you occupy our world." The commander's 4 eyes focused on the human delegation with renewed interest. In his experience, desperate species often made wild claims about secret weapons or hidden defenses. But something in this Chen's tone suggested she wasn't bluffing. "General Vorthak once told me about humans," Zixta mused, his voice dropping to a rumble. "Before the Cygnus campaigns, he said your species was unusual, particularly your offspring." Dr. Chen nodded slowly. "General Vorthak was wise to be cautious. Tell me, Commander, how many occupied worlds has the hegemony controlled where the local children became problematic?" Admiral Krextall's laughter died away. The question hit closer to home than any of the humans could know. The hegemony had indeed faced resistance from young members of conquered species before, but it was typically disorganized, emotional, easily suppressed. "Some juvenile resistance is expected," Zixta admitted carefully. "It never lasts long. That's because you've never dealt with human children." Dr. Chen's smile was thin, almost predatory. "May I share a brief history lesson, Commander?" Without waiting for permission, she activated a small device. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing images of human settlements, children playing in streets, families gathered around primitive communication devices. Earth's history is filled with examples of what happens when adults fail and children must take responsibility. During our global conflicts, children as young as 8 years old served as couriers, spies, and saboteurs. They moved through war zones adults couldn't navigate. They memorized complex codes and maps that defeated your preliminary scans. The images shifted, showing grainy footage of small humans performing acts that made even Zixta's battle-hardened consciousness recoil slightly. Children no taller than his thorax disassembling complex machinery, organizing elaborate networks of communication, developing improvised weapons from household materials. "But that's ancient history," Admiral Krextall interjected, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "Modern human juveniles are soft, dependent on technology." Dr. Chen's laugh was sharp. "Modern human children have access to quantum computing networks, molecular fabricators, and educational systems that would challenge your own military academicians. A 12-year-old human can access more information in an hour than your species typically processes in a full rotation." She gestured, and the holographic display changed again. Now it showed contemporary human children engaged in activities that made Zixta's tactical mind race. Youngsters working with technologies that seemed to rival hegemony equipment, collaborating on projects that spanned continents, solving mathematical problems that had challenged his own engineers. More importantly, Dr. Chen continued, human children don't think like adults. They don't follow conventional military doctrine. They don't respect established hierarchies. They question everything, and when they decide something is wrong, they act with a creativity and persistence that has historically overwhelmed more powerful opponents. Commander Zixta found himself leaning forward despite his attempt to maintain authoritative composure. You're suggesting your offspring would pose a military threat? I'm not suggesting anything, Commander. I'm stating a fact. Dr. Chen's voice became deadly serious. If you occupy Earth, you won't just be dealing with resistance from our military forces or our governments. You'll be dealing with billions of human children who view your presence as an injustice that needs to be corrected. The holographic display shifted one final time, showing a simple image that made Zixta's primary heart stutter. It was security footage from what appeared to be a human educational facility. Children, perhaps 10 or 11 years old, had apparently detected surveillance equipment that even hegemony intelligence considered undetectable. Not only had they found it, but they had somehow reprogrammed it to display this very message. Words in multiple languages scrolled across the screen, but the translation matrix made the meaning clear. We know you're watching. We're watching back. We're ready. Dr. Chen deactivated the device. General Vorthek understood something that perhaps you should consider, Commander. Adult humans can be negotiated with, intimidated, controlled through traditional occupation tactics. Human children operate by different rules entirely. The silence in the crystalline chamber stretched for long moments. Zixta's military experience warred with what he was seeing. Every tactical manual, every occupation protocol, every strategy the hegemony had developed assumed that juvenile populations would be the easiest to manage. What exactly are you proposing, Dr. Chen? He asked finally. A different kind of negotiation. Not surrender terms, but coexistence parameters. Because if you're determined to remain in our system, you're going to need to understand that occupying Earth means dealing with a population where the youngest members might very well be the most dangerous. Admiral Krextal shifted uncomfortably. Commander, surely you don't believe— General Vorthak believed it, Zixta interrupted. And General Vorthak never lost a campaign until he encountered humans. He looked directly at Dr. Chen. Continue your explanation, Doctor. You have my attention. Dr. Chen stepped closer to the central projection array, her movements deliberate and measured. Let me tell you about the Henderson incident, Commander. It happened 3 months ago, during your preliminary reconnaissance phase. She activated another device and the chamber filled with a 3-dimensional map of a human settlement. The detail was remarkable, showing individual structures, transportation networks, and population concentrations with accuracy that impressed even Zixta's analytical mind. Henderson Elementary School, Northern American continent, 700 students between ages 5 and 11. Your advanced scouts deployed micro-surveillance drones throughout the area. Standard intelligence gathering protocol. The map highlighted dozens of tiny markers indicating drone positions. According to your reports, the operation was completely undetected. Admiral Krextal's secondary arms twitched with annoyance. Our stealth technology is unmatched. No primitive species has ever. The children detected your drones on day 2, Dr. Chen interrupted smoothly. Not the adults, not our military, not our government agencies. The children. The holographic display zoomed in on the school building, showing detailed interior layouts. Zixta watched as tiny human figures moved through the corridors, their behavior patterns appearing completely normal to his trained eye. How? He asked, genuinely curious now. 8-year-old Marcus Williams noticed that the local bird migration patterns had shifted slightly. Birds were avoiding certain areas where your drones were positioned. 11-year-old Amy Nakamura realized that her electromagnetic field detection project was picking up anomalous readings. 10-year-old David Rodriguez observed that shadows fell differently in specific locations during certain times of day. Dr. Chen paused, letting the implications sink in. Individually, these observations meant nothing. But human children have something your intelligence analysts didn't account for. Social networks optimized for rapid information sharing and pattern recognition. The display showed a web of communication links spreading throughout the school, then expanding to connect with other educational facilities across the continent. The network grew exponentially, connecting millions of nodes in a pattern that made Zixta's tactical processors struggle to track the complexity. Within 72 hours, children across 6 continents had identified the locations of every single drone in your reconnaissance fleet. Dr. Chen continued. They created detailed tracking algorithms, established monitoring schedules, and began systematic counter-surveillance operations. Impossible, Admiral Krextal chittered. Our reports showed no indication of discovery. Dr. Chen's smile was sharp enough to cut through battle armor. That's because the children decided not to interfere with your surveillance. They wanted to study you first. The holographic display shifted again, now showing feeds from what appeared to be improvised monitoring stations. Young humans operated sophisticated equipment that seemed to be built from combinations of educational materials, household items, and technologies that Zixta couldn't immediately identify. While your drones were watching us, human children were analyzing your technology, mapping your fleet positions, studying your behavioral patterns, and developing countermeasures. They created a complete intelligence profile of your species before your own command structure realized they existed. Commander Zixta felt a cold realization creeping through his consciousness. The data corruption in our reconnaissance reports, 11-year-old Jennifer Kim developed a quantum interference algorithm that could selectively edit your surveillance feeds without triggering your security protocols. Your drones recorded exactly what the children wanted you to see. Dr. Chen gestured, and the display showed side-by-side comparisons of actual events versus what the hegemony drones had recorded. The differences were subtle but significant. But why? Zixta asked. Why not simply alert your authorities? Because human children understand something that adults often forget. Information is more valuable than immediate action. They wanted to learn everything they could about your capabilities, your weaknesses, your technology, before revealing their awareness. The display changed again, showing a vast underground network that spanned the entire human settlement. Tunnels, communication lines, supply caches, and coordination centers had been constructed. In the space beneath the school and surrounding buildings, the Henderson children spent 3 months building a complete resistance infrastructure while your surveillance drones recorded them attending classes and playing recreational games. They did this while maintaining perfect academic performance and normal social behavior patterns. Admiral Krextel's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of severe agitation. Commander, surely we cannot accept such claims without verification. Dr. Chen nodded toward her companions. One of them, a young human who appeared to be barely past juvenile age himself, stepped forward and activated his own device. My name is Alex Chen, age 17. I'm Dr. Chen's son, and I coordinate communications between children's resistance networks on Earth. His voice carried a confidence that seemed inappropriate for his apparent age. Would you like a demonstration of our capabilities? Before Zixta could respond, every display screen in the crystalline chamber flickered and changed. Suddenly they were showing feeds from inside his own flagship, from angles that shouldn't have been possible, displaying information that was supposedly secured behind multiple layers of hegemony encryption. How are you doing this? Zixta demanded, his voice rising to a roar that should have intimidated any juvenile of any species. Alex didn't flinch. Your ship's quantum communication array uses a fascinating modulation system. It took my study group about 6 hours to crack the basic encryption protocols. The really interesting part was figuring out how to piggyback our signals through your own network without triggering security alerts. The displays now showed detailed schematics of the hegemony flagship, complete with tactical assessments, crew movement patterns, and vulnerabilities that Zixta's own security staff hadn't identified. My little sister Sarah figured out the gravitometric field equations you use for faster-than-light travel. Alex continued conversationally. She's 9 years old and thinks your engineering team made some inefficient design choices. She's prepared some suggestions for improvements if you're interested. Dr. Chen watched Zixta's expression carefully. Commander, you're beginning to understand the scope of what you're facing. This isn't military resistance in any conventional sense. This is an entire population of young humans who view your presence as an interesting puzzle to be solved. The children aren't afraid of you, Alex added. They're curious about you. And when human children get curious about something, they tend to take it apart to see how it works. Zixta looked at the displays showing his own ship's vulnerabilities, analyzed and cataloged by beings who shouldn't even understand the basic principles of his technology. General Vorthak mentioned that human offspring were persistent. Persistent is one word for it, Dr. Chen replied. Relentless might be more accurate. Human children don't give up when they encounter problems. They find solutions, and if conventional solutions don't work, they invent new ones. The commander turned to Admiral Krextel, whose earlier confidence had evaporated completely. Admiral, what was the final outcome of General Vorthak's human encounter? Krextal's voice was barely above a whisper. The general was found in his command chamber, unharmed but changed. He spent his remaining cycles warning anyone who would listen about human juveniles. The official reports classified his statements as combat-induced psychological damage. Because the truth was too disturbing to accept, Dr. Chen said quietly. General Vorthak discovered that human children had not only penetrated every security system in his fleet, but had been quietly studying hegemony technology for months. When he finally realized what was happening, they had already developed improvements to his own weapon systems. Alex smiled, and for the first time, Zixtha noticed that it wasn't entirely pleasant. They gave him the upgrades as a gift, along with detailed explanations of 17 different ways they could have disabled his entire fleet without harming a single crew member. Then they asked if he wanted to play a game. Commander Zixtha's tactical mind raced through scenarios as Alex's words sank in. The idea of juveniles casually offering military improvements while simultaneously demonstrating the ability to destroy his forces challenged every strategic principle he understood. What kind of game? He found himself asking, though part of him dreaded the answer. Alex exchanged glances with his mother before responding. They called it hide and seek. The rules were simple. General Vorthak's fleet would try to locate and capture a group of human children who would be hiding somewhere within a designated area. If he succeeded, the children would provide him with detailed intelligence about Earth's defenses. If he failed, Admiral Krextel prompted, his voice tight with apprehension. Dr. Chen took over the explanation. If he failed, the children would demonstrate why attempting to occupy Earth would be the greatest strategic mistake the hegemony could make. The holographic display activated again, showing what appeared to be a barren asteroid field in space. Dozens of hegemony vessels moved through the area in complex search patterns, their sensors sweeping systematically through every possible hiding place. The children chose an abandoned mining system in the outer rim. Dr. Chen continued. No atmosphere, no indigenous technology, no resources except bare rock and metal. General Vorthak had 3,000 ships and the most advanced detection equipment in the galaxy. Zixtha watched the display with growing unease. The search pattern was flawless, exactly what he would have ordered in similar circumstances. The hegemony vessels moved with military precision, leaving no space unchecked, no possible hiding spot unexplored. How many human children participated in this exercise? He asked. 12, Alex replied casually, ages ranging from 7 to 14. They had 3 days to prepare and basic survival equipment suitable for space operations. 12 juveniles against 3,000 military vessels. Admiral Krextal's voice carried a note of relief. Surely the outcome was inevitable. The holographic display fast-forwarded through several days of searching. The hegemony fleet continued its methodical sweep, growing more intensive as time passed. Additional ships arrived as General Vorthak became increasingly determined to locate the hidden humans. On day 7, General Vorthak declared victory, Dr. Chen said. His sensors had detected no sign of the children. His conclusion was that they had perished in the harsh environment, proving that human juveniles were not as formidable as their reputation suggested. Alex smiled that unsettling smile again. That's when the children decided the game was over. The display showed the hegemony flagship, identical to Zixtha's current vessel. Suddenly, every screen on the bridge began displaying a simple message in perfect hegemony script. Game over. We win. The children had been inside General Vorthak's ship the entire time, Dr. Chen explained. They had somehow infiltrated his flagship during the initial deployment and had spent 7 days studying every system, every protocol, every weakness. Zixtha felt his secondary hearts skip again. That's impossible. Hegemony vessels have multiple security layers, biological scanners, quantum detection grids. Had, Alex corrected gently. Past tense. The children improved your security systems while they were there, made them more efficient, closed several vulnerabilities your engineers hadn't noticed. They left detailed technical manuals explaining the upgrades. The holographic display split into multiple feeds, showing the 12 human children moving freely throughout the massive hegemony warship. They appeared to understand the technology better than the crew operating it, making subtle modifications and improvements as they explored. But that wasn't the demonstration, Dr. Chen said quietly. That was just the children getting comfortable with their environment. The real demonstration began when they started implementing the improvements they had designed. The display showed technical readouts that made Zixitha's engineering knowledge strain to keep pace. Power efficiency improvements, weapon system optimizations, defensive capability enhancements, all implemented by juveniles who shouldn't have understood the basic principles involved. Within hours, General Vorthak's flagship had become the most advanced vessel in the hegemony fleet, Alex continued. The children had transformed it into something that could have single-handedly conquered entire star systems. Then they gave him a choice, Dr. Chen said. He could keep the improvements and use them to expand hegemony territory throughout the galaxy. All he had to do was agree never to approach Earth again. Admiral Krextal leaned forward. And if he refused? The holographic display changed to show a simple technical diagram. At first glance, it appeared to be a standard power distribution system. But as Zixitha studied it more carefully, he realized it was actually a blueprint for converting a starship's entire energy output into a feedback loop that would cause cascading system failures throughout any connected fleet. They showed him how easily they could disable every ship in his armada, Dr. Chen explained. Not destroy them, not harm the crews, just render them completely powerless and adrift in space. They had installed the necessary modifications throughout his entire fleet while he was searching for them. 12 children, Alex added cheerfully, had essentially captured 3,000 military vessels and their crews without anyone noticing, until they decided to reveal themselves. Zixitha found himself studying the young human with new eyes. The casual confidence, the cheerful tone while describing the systematic defeat of a hegemony general, the apparent complete lack of fear or even concern about the consequences of such actions. What did General Vorthak choose? He asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. He chose wisdom, Dr. Chen replied. He accepted the improvements to his fleet, agreed to avoid Earth, and spent the rest of his career trying to warn other hegemony commanders about what they would face if they attempted to conquer humanity. Most of them didn't believe him, Alex said. Adults often have trouble accepting that children can be more capable than they are. It challenges too many assumptions about how the universe works. The holographic display returned to showing the interior of Zixitha's own flagship, where the security breaches Alex had demonstrated were still active. Technical readouts scrolled past showing system vulnerabilities, communication intercepts, and tactical assessments that his own staff should have been providing. The question now, Commander, Dr. Chen said, is whether you're going to make the same choice General Vorthak made, or whether you're going to test whether human children have developed new capabilities in the cycles since his encounter. Zixitha looked around his crystalline chamber, seeing it now as the children undoubtedly saw it. Not an intimidating seat of power, but simply another interesting puzzle to be solved. Every system, every defense, every carefully planned intimidation factor reduced to technical challenges that apparently could be overcome by beings who hadn't yet reached physical maturity. How many human children are currently aware of our presence in your system? He asked. Alex consulted a device that appeared to be built from components Zixitha didn't recognize. Current estimates suggest approximately 2 billion children across Earth have varying degrees of knowledge about your fleet. About 50 million are actively participating in monitoring and analysis operations. 50 million, Admiral Krextal repeated faintly. That's just the ones who are interested in space-based tactical problems, Alex clarified helpfully. The children working on other aspects of the situation represent different specializations. Marine biology students are designing underwater resistance networks. Chemistry enthusiasts are developing new materials and compounds. Computer science groups are working on information warfare capabilities. Dr. Chen watched Zixitha's expression carefully. Commander, you're beginning to understand why we requested this meeting. We're not here to surrender. We're here to help you avoid making a mistake that would be remembered throughout hegemony history as the greatest tactical error ever committed. Because human children, Alex added with that same unsettling smile, really like solving interesting problems. And an occupying alien force would be the most interesting problem they've encountered in decades. The silence that followed Alex's statement stretched across the crystalline chamber like a physical thing. Commander Zixitha found himself calculating odds, running tactical simulations, and discovering that every scenario he could envision led to outcomes that challenged his fundamental understanding of warfare and occupation. Show me, he said finally. Show me what these children are currently doing. Dr. Chen nodded to another member of her delegation, a middle-aged man who stepped forward with obvious reluctance. Commander, this is Dr. James Patterson, Director of Educational Systems Monitoring. Jim, please explain what we've observed in the past week. Dr. Patterson activated a portable display unit, and the chamber filled with a three-dimensional map of Earth. Thousands of small lights pulsed across the surface, concentrated heavily around population centers, but extending into remote areas that surprised Zixtha with their scope. Each light represents a group of children who have organized themselves into what they call problem-solving clusters. Dr. Patterson began, his voice carrying the tone of someone reporting facts he wished weren't true. As of this morning, we've identified over 40,000 active groups ranging in size from 5 to several hundred participants. The map zoomed in on North America, revealing a dense network of interconnected nodes. This cluster in what you would call the Pacific Northwestern region consists of approximately 800 children between ages 6 and 16. They've designated themselves as Engineering Solutions Group 7 and have spent the past 5 days developing what they describe as visitor accommodation protocols. Admiral Krextal leaned forward. Accommodation protocols? Alex looked almost apologetic. They want to help you improve your ships. The kids think your faster-than-light drive system is inefficient and your life support technology is unnecessarily complex. They've designed what they call friendship upgrades for your entire fleet. Friendship upgrades, Zixtha repeated slowly. The children's term for technological improvements offered as gifts, Dr. Chen explained. It's their way of demonstrating goodwill while simultaneously showing their capabilities. The improvements are always genuine and always come with comprehensive technical documentation. The display shifted to show detailed engineering schematics that made Zixtha's head spin. The modifications were elegant, efficient, and would indeed represent significant improvements to hegemony technology. They were also impossibly sophisticated for beings who should barely understand basic mathematics. Groups in the Asian continent have been working on communication enhancement projects, Dr. Patterson continued. They've developed translation protocols that would allow perfect understanding between your species and humans, along with cultural exchange programs designed to prevent misunderstandings. Cultural exchange programs? Admiral Krextal said weakly. The children want to learn about your civilization, Alex explained. They're curious about your art, your music, your literature, your scientific achievements, your history. They've prepared presentations about human culture to share in return. The display showed what appeared to be an enormous archive of information, organized with meticulous care, and presented in formats that would be accessible to non-human intelligence. Art galleries, musical compositions, scientific papers, historical documentaries, all prepared by children who somehow understood how to make human culture comprehensible to alien minds. The European groups have been focusing on environmental optimization, Dr. Patterson went on. They've designed terraforming technologies that could transform marginal worlds into garden paradises. They think your people might be interested in expanding into more pleasant environments. Zixtha studied the terraforming plans with growing amazement. The technology was not only feasible but revolutionary, representing advances that would normally take centuries of development. How is this possible? How can juveniles develop solutions that elude our most advanced researchers? That's the question we've been asking ourselves for months, Dr. Chen admitted. The answer seems to be that human children approach problems differently than adults. They don't start with assumptions about what's possible or impossible. They simply look at a problem and begin working toward solutions. Alex nodded enthusiastically. Plus, we share information really efficiently. When one group makes a breakthrough, it gets distributed to thousands of other groups within hours. Every improvement builds on every other improvement exponentially. The display changed again, showing communication networks that spanned the globe with complexity that rivaled hegemony command structures. Children shared data, collaborated on projects, built upon each other's work with a speed and efficiency that military organizations struggled to match. The South American groups have been working on what they call conflict resolution protocols. Dr. Patterson continued, his voice growing more strained. They've analyzed hegemony expansion patterns throughout your history and developed strategies for peaceful integration that would benefit both civilizations. They've essentially designed a blueprint for voluntary cooperation. Between our species, Dr. Chen added, complete with economic systems, legal frameworks, and cultural preservation measures. Zixta found himself staring at plans that were more comprehensive and thoughtful than anything produced by hegemony diplomatic corps. The children had somehow anticipated and addressed every possible source of conflict between their species, creating frameworks for cooperation that would benefit both civilizations while maintaining the distinct identity of each. The African groups have been exploring space travel improvements, Dr. Patterson said, his voice now barely above a whisper. They think your current interstellar travel methods are limited and have designed alternatives that would allow exploration of distant galaxies. The technical specifications that appeared on the display made Zixta's engineering education feel inadequate. The children had not only understood the limitations of current hegemony technology but had developed solutions that would expand their civilization's reach beyond anything previously imagined. The Australian groups have been working on longevity research, Dr. Patterson continued. They think both of our species could benefit from enhanced lifespans and have developed medical technologies that could extend healthy life by several centuries. And the children in Antarctica, Alex added cheerfully, have been designing recreational activities they think hegemony personnel might enjoy during long space voyages. They've created games, entertainment systems, and social activities specifically adapted for your species' psychology and physical characteristics. Commander Zixta looked around his chamber, seeing his own officers' expressions of shock and disbelief mirrored in their postures and movements. Every assumption about human capabilities, every strategic calculation about occupation feasibility, every military doctrine about conquering primitive civilizations had been systematically dismantled by the simple presentation of facts. Commander, Dr. Chen said quietly, you're beginning to understand why General Vorthak spent his final cycles trying to warn other hegemony leaders. It's not that human children are dangerous in any conventional military sense. It's that they're so genuinely interested in helping that they'll completely transform your entire civilization whether you want them to or not. They can't help themselves, Alex added apologetically. When they see problems, they solve them. When they encounter new people, they want to be friends. When they find inefficient systems, they improve them. It's just how human children think. Admiral Krextal turned to Zixta with desperation in his voice. Commander, surely we cannot allow a species of juveniles to dictate terms to the hegemony? Dr. Chen's expression became very serious. Admiral, you're still not understanding the situation. The children aren't trying to dictate anything. They're trying to help you succeed beyond your wildest dreams. The question is whether you're prepared for that level of success, and whether your civilization can handle the changes that would inevitably follow. Commander Zixta stood in contemplative silence, his four eyes scanning the technical displays that continued to show impossible achievements by impossible beings. The tactical part of his mind wanted to reject everything he was seeing, to fall back on conventional military doctrine and proceed with the invasion. But the strategic part of his consciousness, the part that had kept him alive through 50 cycles of warfare, was screaming warnings he couldn't ignore. Dr. Chen, he said finally, you mentioned that General Vorthak tried to warn other hegemony commanders. What happened to those who didn't listen? The human delegation exchanged glances before Dr. Chen activated another display. There were 3 subsequent encounters, Commander. Each one more educational than the last. The holographic projection showed a different star system, where hegemony forces had deployed in what appeared to be standard invasion formation. Admiral Threshek ignored General Vorthak's warnings and attempted to establish a blockade around Earth 18 months ago. Attempted, Alex emphasized. The children were really excited about visitors coming to play. They'd been working on surprise gifts. The display showed the hegemony blockade fleet, over 5,000 vessels arranged in perfect tactical formation around Earth's solar system. Then gradually the ships began to change. Their hulls became more streamlined. Their energy signatures grew more efficient. Their weapon systems transformed into configurations that Zixta didn't recognize. The children decided that Admiral Threshek's ships looked uncomfortable, Dr. Chen explained. So they improved them, enhanced life support systems, upgraded recreational facilities, optimized food production, improved communication networks. They worked for 3 weeks to make the blockade fleet the most advanced armada in hegemony history. But they also made some other changes. Alex added with that unsettling smile. They converted all the weapon systems into manufacturing equipment, turned the military communication networks into entertainment systems, and transformed the tactical computers into educational platforms. Zixta stared at the display in horror. They disabled an entire fleet? They improved an entire fleet, Dr. Chen corrected. Admiral Threshek found himself commanding the most efficient, comfortable, and technologically advanced ships ever constructed. His crews were healthier, happier, and more capable than any hegemony personnel had ever been. The only thing they couldn't do anymore was wage war. The children left detailed instruction manuals explaining how to convert everything back to military configuration, Alex said helpfully. But they also included comparative analysis showing why the peaceful configurations were more efficient and beneficial for everyone involved. The display changed to show internal footage from the modified ships. Hegemony personnel moved through corridors that were brighter, more comfortable, and obviously more pleasant than standard military vessels. Recreation areas bustled with activities. Educational centers hummed with learning, and engineering sections produced amazing technological innovations. Admiral Threshek's crews didn't want to convert back to military systems, Dr. Chen said quietly. For the first time in their lives, they were experiencing what it was like to live in an environment designed for well-being rather than warfare. Morale improved dramatically, scientific productivity increased exponentially, and cultural development flourished. The Admiral faced a mutiny, Admiral Krextel asked. The Admiral faced a petition, Alex corrected, signed by every single member of his crews, requesting permission to maintain the improvements and establish permanent peaceful relations with Earth. They had experienced something better than military life, and they didn't want to go back. The display showed the petition document, written in formal hegemony script, but decorated with colorful artwork that could only have been created by human children. Thousands of signatures covered dozens of pages, along with personal testimonials from hegemony, personnel describing their improved quality of life. Admiral Threshek returned to hegemony space with the most advanced fleet in the galaxy and a complete transformation in his personnel's worldview, Dr. Chen continued. His reports were classified and he was quietly reassigned to administrative duties. What about the other encounters? Zixta asked, though he was beginning to dread the answer. Dr. Patterson stepped forward again, his expression even more troubled than before. Commander Gexrin attempted a direct assault 8 months ago. He decided that overwhelming force applied quickly would prevent the children from having time to implement their improvements. The holographic display shifted to show a massive hegemony assault fleet, easily 10,000 vessels strong, approaching Earth at maximum velocity. The formation was perfect, the tactics flawless, the timing calculated to achieve complete surprise. The children were ready, Alex said simply. The display showed what happened next in slow motion. As the hegemony fleet approached Earth, every single ship began to slow down, not because of enemy action or technical malfunction, but because their crews were becoming increasingly fascinated by educational broadcasts that had somehow appeared on every communication channel. The children had prepared the most comprehensive cultural exchange program in human history, Dr. Chen explained. Art, music, literature, science, philosophy, mathematics, history, entertainment. All specifically designed to be irresistibly interesting to hegemony psychology. Zixta watched in amazement as the invasion fleet gradually came to a complete stop, not from any external force but because the crews were too absorbed in learning about human civilization to continue their attack. Ship after ship dropped out of formation as personnel gathered around communication screens, sharing discoveries and discussing the incredible wealth of information they were receiving. But that wasn't the real demonstration, Alex said. That was just the children being friendly. The real demonstration came when Commander Gexrin tried to force his crews to resume the attack. The display showed the hegemony commander's flagship as he issued increasingly frantic orders to ignore the broadcasts and continue the assault. His commands went out through the communication networks, only to be met with polite responses explaining why the crews thought there might be better alternatives to warfare. The children had spent months studying hegemony military psychology, Dr. Chen said. They understood that hegemony personnel are naturally curious, scientifically minded, and fundamentally interested in improving their civilization. Once they saw what could be accomplished through cooperation instead of conquest, the logical choice became obvious. Commander Gexrin's entire fleet defected? Admiral Krextal asked weakly. Commander Gexrin's entire fleet evolved, Alex corrected gently. They didn't abandon their loyalty to the hegemony. They expanded their understanding of what the hegemony could become. The display showed the aftermath, 10,000 hegemony vessels working in partnership with human children to develop technologies, create art, explore scientific questions, and design improvements to both civilizations. The productivity was staggering, the innovations revolutionary, the level of cooperation unprecedented in galactic history. Commander Gexrin himself spent 6 months working directly with human children on advanced mathematics, Dr. Chen added. He later described it as the most intellectually stimulating period of his entire life. His reports to Hegemony Command included mathematical proofs that revolutionized understanding of quantum mechanics. What was the third encounter? Zixta asked, though part of him no longer wanted to know. Dr. Patterson consulted his notes with obvious reluctance. High Admiral Vexthera attempted what she called a surgical strike 3 months ago. She decided that eliminating human children directly would solve the problem before it could spread further. The chamber fell silent except for the humming of ship systems. Even Admiral Krextal's secondary arms stopped their nervous twitching. She targeted educational facilities, population centers with high concentrations of children, communication networks that the children used for coordination. Dr. Chen said quietly, "It was a precisely planned operation designed to cripple human juvenile capabilities while leaving adult infrastructure intact." Alex's expression became serious for the first time in the conversation. The children were very disappointed. They had prepared so many wonderful gifts and friendship offerings, and High Admiral Vexithera chose violence instead. What happened? Zixta asked, though his strategic mind was already providing answers he didn't want to contemplate. The children protected themselves, Dr. Chen said simply. They had spent years studying hegemony weapons technology and had developed defensive systems that made their communities completely invulnerable to attack. High Admiral Vexithara's surgical strikes encountered barriers that shouldn't have been possible. The display showed hegemony weapons striking targets on Earth, only to be absorbed, redirected, or simply neutralized by defense systems that seemed to violate basic physics. Energy beams dissipated harmlessly. Kinetic projectiles stopped in midair. Even exotic matter bombs simply disappeared without effect. But the really impressive part, Alex continued, was what they did to help High Admiral Vexithera understand why her approach wasn't working. They helped her? Admiral Krextal croaked. They always... The weight of realization settled over Commander Zixta, like the gravity field of a collapsing star. 3 separate hegemony commanders, each more experienced and capable than himself, had encountered human children and emerged fundamentally changed, not defeated in any conventional sense, but transformed in ways that challenged the very foundation of hegemony military doctrine. High Admiral Vexithera, he said slowly. What became of her? Dr. Chen's expression softened slightly. She's currently on Earth, working with children in the Antarctic research stations. She requested permission to study human educational methods and has become one of our most effective advocates for peaceful interspecies cooperation. She defected? Admiral Krextal's voice cracked with disbelief. She evolved, Alex corrected patiently. Same as all the others. Once hegemony personnel experience what's possible when intelligence is directed toward cooperation instead of conquest, most of them prefer the collaborative approach. The holographic display shifted to show what appeared to be a thriving research complex in Earth's polar region. Hegemony personnel worked alongside human children in laboratories, workshops, and discussion areas that buzzed with intellectual activity. The atmosphere was one of excitement, discovery, and genuine enthusiasm that Zixta had never seen in any military installation. The children taught High Admiral Vexthera to play chess, Dr. Chen said with a slight smile. She's become quite good at it, though she admits that 10-year-old Marcus Williams still beats her regularly. She says it's the most humbling and educational experience of her life. Zixta studied the images of his former colleague engaged in recreational activities with alien juveniles. Her posture relaxed and her expression animated in ways that military protocol had never permitted. She appears content. She appears fulfilled, Dr. Patterson corrected. All of them do. That's what we've been trying to explain, Commander. Human children don't destroy their opponents. They transform them into better versions of themselves. Alex nodded enthusiastically. It's way more fun than fighting. Plus, everybody learns amazing things and gets to work on really cool projects together. The casual way the young human discussed the transformation of high-ranking hegemony military officers sent another chill through Zixta's consciousness. This wasn't conquest in any recognizable form. It was something far more profound and potentially irreversible. Commander, Dr. Chen said, her voice taking on a more serious tone. We need to discuss what happens next. Your fleet is currently positioned for standard invasion protocol, but you now understand why that approach would be problematic. Problematic, Admiral Krextall repeated faintly. The children are very excited about your arrival, Alex explained. They've been preparing gifts and friendship offerings for weeks. They've designed improvements for your ships, educational programs about human culture, recreational activities for your crews, and collaborative research projects that would advance both of our civilizations by centuries. The holographic display showed a vast network of preparation activities across Earth, millions of children working on projects specifically designed to welcome and assist the hegemony fleet. The scale of coordination was staggering, the level of preparation exhaustive, the enthusiasm genuine and unmistakable. What if we simply withdrew? Zixta asked. Returned to hegemony space and reported that Earth was unsuitable for conquest? Dr. Chen shook her head. I'm afraid it's too late for that, Commander. The children know you're here and they've already begun implementing their welcome protocols. Your ships are currently receiving the first wave of friendship upgrades. Admiral Krextall spun toward the communication station. Engineering! Report status of all ship systems immediately. The response came through speakers that somehow sounded clearer and more pleasant than before. Admiral, this is Chief Engineer Kixwan. All systems are operating at 130% of normal efficiency. I'm detecting multiple improvements to power distribution, life support optimization, and structural integrity enhancement. The modifications appear to be beneficial, but I have no idea how they were implemented. 47 children from the North American Pacific coast decided your ships looked uncomfortable, Alex explained apologetically. They've been working on hospitality improvements for the past 6 hours. Nothing major, just basic comfort and efficiency upgrades. Zixta felt his control of the situation slipping away like quantum particles through a deteriorating containment field. How are they accessing our ships? Our security systems should prevent any unauthorized modifications. Your security systems are really interesting, Alex said admiringly. The kids spent about 20 minutes figuring out how they work, then another hour designing improvements that make them more effective while still allowing friendly visitors to help with maintenance and upgrades. The holographic display showed technical readouts from Zixta's own flagship. Every system was indeed operating at enhanced efficiency, but more importantly, the security networks had been subtly modified to categorize human children as authorized maintenance personnel, with full access to all ship functions. They're in our computers, Admiral Krextall whispered. They're in our hearts, came a new voice from the communication system. Zixta recognized it as belonging to Lieutenant Gexta from the navigation section. Commander, you need to see what these little ones have shown us. The mathematical models they've developed for faster-than-light travel are incredible. We could reach the far galaxy in cycles instead of generations. Lieutenant, report to the bridge immediately, Zixta ordered. Can't right now, Commander. We're in the middle of a fascinating discussion about quantum mechanics with some human children who want to help us understand how space-time really works. Did you know that our current understanding of dimensional physics is only about 60% accurate? Dr. Chen watched Zixta's expression with something that might have been sympathy. Commander, this is what happened to General Vorthak, Admiral Threshek, Commander Gexrin, and High Admiral Vex Thara. The children don't attack your personnel or your ships. They just start helping, and once your people experience what that help can accomplish, they don't want to stop. It's like a virus, Admiral Krextall said desperately. It's like friendship, Alex corrected gently. Human children are really, really good at making friends. And once you're friends with them, they want to share everything they know and help you become the best version of yourself possible. More voices began coming through the communication. system as personnel throughout the ship reported increasingly enthusiastic interactions with human children who had somehow gained access to every section of the vessel. Engineers marveled at technological improvements. Scientists discussed revolutionary theories. Even security personnel were engaging in friendly conversations about better ways to maintain ship safety. "Commander," Dr. Chen said quietly, "you have a choice to make. You can fight this, in which case the children will sadly but efficiently demonstrate why resistance is futile, or you can embrace it, in which case you and your people will experience a transformation that will make you more capable, more fulfilled, and more successful than you ever imagined possible." "What kind of transformation?" Zixta asked, though he was beginning to suspect he already knew. Alex's smile was radiant with genuine happiness. "The kind where everybody wins, everybody learns amazing things, and everybody gets to work together on making the universe a better place for everyone. It's going to be so much fun." The communication system crackled with voices from throughout the ship. Hegemony personnel reporting discoveries, improvements, and collaborative projects with an enthusiasm that Zixta had never heard in any military context. His invasion fleet was being systematically transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history. And the most terrifying part was that everyone involved seemed genuinely delighted about it. 6 months later, Commander Zixta stood in what had once been the tactical center of his flagship and marveled at how much everything had changed. The sterile military environment had been transformed into something that resembled a cross between a research laboratory, an art gallery, and a playground. Hegemony personnel worked alongside human children on projects that would have been impossible to imagine during his days of conquest and occupation. The ship itself had evolved beyond recognition. The weapon systems had been converted into manufacturing facilities capable of producing wonders that pushed the boundaries of known science. The military communication networks had become educational platforms connecting thousands of species across the galaxy. The tactical computers had transformed into collaborative research tools that were advancing understanding of the universe at an unprecedented pace. "Commander Zixta," called a familiar voice. He turned to see Alex Chen approaching, now taller than when they had first met, but still carrying that same unsettling smile that had once filled him with dread and now brought him genuine pleasure. "Sarah's group just finished the prototype for the dimensional gateway. Want to see how it works?" Sarah, Alex's 9-year-old sister, had indeed revolutionized faster than light travel. Her modifications to hegemony technology allowed instantaneous transportation between any 2 points in the universe, a breakthrough that had already begun transforming galactic civilization. "Of course," Zixta replied, his 4 eyes bright with curiosity that would have been impossible during his military career. "But first, tell me about the cultural exchange program results." Alex consulted a device that appeared to be built from crystallized music and liquid mathematics, one of the artistic scientific hybrids that human children created as naturally as breathing. 47 species have requested permanent educational partnerships with Earth. The Hegemony Council has voted to restructure the entire governmental system based on human collaborative models, and the children from the Andromeda Contact Mission just sent back reports about 17 new civilizations that want to join what they're calling the Friendship Alliance. The Friendship Alliance. Zixta still struggled with the name sometimes, though he had to admit it accurately described what human children had created. What had started as a simple invasion fleet had become the seed of a galactic confederation based on cooperation, learning, and mutual improvement rather than conquest and domination. "Admiral Krextal is leading the delegation to the Vegan Harmonics concert tonight," Alex continued. "The music they've created by combining human melodies with hegemony mathematical principles is supposed to be incredible." Admiral Krextal, who had once demanded the destruction of human civilization, was now one of the most enthusiastic advocates for interspecies artistic collaboration. His transformation had been particularly dramatic, as he discovered that his analytical mind was perfectly suited for understanding the mathematical structures underlying human creative expression. "Dr. Chen wanted me to remind you about the planning session for the next exploration mission," Alex said. "The children have identified a galaxy cluster that might contain civilizations interested in joining the Alliance." Dr. Sarah Chen had become the unofficial coordinator for human hegemony cooperation, a role that involved managing the enthusiastic chaos of billions of children working on projects that routinely redefined what was possible. Her diplomatic skills had proven essential for helping other species understand and adapt to human juvenile psychology. Tell her I'll be there after I finish reviewing the latest educational curriculum proposals, Zixta replied. The children's suggestions for improving hegemony learning systems are fascinating, but I want to make sure I understand the implementation requirements. The truth was that Zixta had become addicted to learning in ways that his military training had never allowed. Human children had shown him that intelligence could be used for creation rather than destruction, for cooperation rather than conquest, for joy rather than mere duty. The transformation had been gradual but complete. A chime sounded from the ship's communication system, which now played melodies composed by collaborative teams of human and alien children. Commander, came the voice of Lieutenant Gexta, we're receiving transmission from the exploration group that went to investigate the Spiral Nebula civilizations. Put it through, Zixta ordered, though ordered was no longer really the correct term. The ship operated on principles of collaborative decision-making that made traditional military hierarchy obsolete. The main display activated, showing the face of High Admiral Vexithara, though she no longer used her military title. Her expression was animated with the excitement that had become characteristic of all former hegemony personnel working with human children. Zixta, she called out, her formal military bearing completely abandoned. You won't believe what we've discovered out here. The children were right about there being advanced civilizations in this region, but we never imagined how advanced. The display shifted to show what appeared to be a space station larger than most planets, its surface covered with structures that seemed to grow like living crystal forests. Ships moved around it in patterns that suggested biological organization rather than mechanical engineering. The crystalline collective has been waiting for someone to teach them about music, Vexthara continued. They're a species of living mineral beings who understand mathematics and engineering at levels that make our technology look primitive, but they've never encountered the concept of artistic expression. Alex leaned over Zixta's shoulder to get a better view of the display. Oh, that's wonderful. The kids are going to be so excited. Musical mathematics is one of their favorite collaboration projects. There's more, Vexthara said, her voice carrying the enthusiasm of a child sharing a favorite discovery. The collective wants to join the Friendship Alliance, but they're offering something unprecedented. They want to share their knowledge of dimensional engineering, which would allow us to construct entire universes designed specifically for collaborative learning and creative expression. The implications were staggering. The ability to create custom universes would mean unlimited space for growth, unlimited resources for projects, unlimited opportunities for species to develop and share their unique capabilities. The children have already started working on design proposals, Vexithara continued. They want to create a universe where physics operates according to principles that encourage cooperation rather than competition, where resources automatically regenerate, where every species can develop their full potential without interfering with anyone else's growth. Zixta felt the familiar sense of wonder that had become his constant companion since human children had transformed his understanding of what was possible. When do we expect the collective delegation to arrive? They're already on their way, Vexithara replied, along with representatives from 6 other civilizations who heard about the alliance and want to participate. The children are planning what they call a Welcome to the Universe party that should be quite educational for everyone involved. After the transmission ended, Zixta stood quietly in his transformed command center, reflecting on the journey that had brought him to this moment. He had arrived at Earth as a conqueror, following military protocols developed over centuries of successful invasions. He was leaving as something entirely new, an explorer, a collaborator, a student in the endless university that human children had created among the stars. Commander? Alex asked gently. Are you okay? You look thoughtful. I was remembering General Vorthak's warning, Zixta replied. He tried to tell me that human children were a nightmare. He was right in a way. Alex's expression became concerned. Are you having second thoughts about the alliance? Zixta's mandibles clicked in what humans had learned to recognize as laughter. No, Alex. I'm realizing that General Vorthak was right about human children being a nightmare for anyone who prefers the limitations of the old universe. You've made it impossible for any of us to accept anything less than infinite possibility." He looked around at his transformed ship, filled with beings from dozens of species working together on projects that redefined reality itself. The hegemony came to conquer Earth and ended up being conquered by the most powerful force in the universe. Children who genuinely want everyone to succeed. Alex grinned with delight. "So you're saying the nightmare is actually awesome?" "I'm saying," Zixtha replied, "that I finally understand why General Vorthak spent his final cycles trying to warn people about human children. He was trying to save them from having to choose between the small universe they knew and the infinite universe you were offering." And now, Zixtha looked out at the stars, knowing that each one represented new possibilities for growth, learning, and friendship that had been unimaginable before human children taught the galaxy how to dream bigger. Now I understand that it was never really a choice at all. Once you've seen what's possible when intelligence is directed toward helping everyone succeed, anything else becomes unthinkable. The nightmare, as it turned out, was not what human children could do to you. The nightmare was imagining a universe without them,